The Giants have had a busy and productive offseason. Yes, they missed out on their top two targets, but nonetheless, I like what they've done. However, I can't shake the feeling, and I think neither can fans, and the projections back it up, that they're still a significant piece or two away. Thankfully, there's several substantial pieces still out there on the market.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, coming up on 5 years hosting Locked On Giants, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Check us out there if you have not already. Join the party there on YouTube. And please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you are following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And where we get started is by discussing, I just can't shake this feeling. And I think fans have the same exact feeling. And then, like I said, the projection systems that we've looked at, which are numerous at this point, kind of have the same, kind of tell the same story, which is that this is a team that figures to be like somewhat in contention, but that's not good enough, right? Like the fans and I know that that's not, you don't want to be like fringe and you can't be missing the playoffs. And so they're still a big piece or two away. And the good news is that there are big pieces still out there in free agency, specifically Blake Snell, Matt Chapman, Cody Bellinger, Jordan Montgomery. And the closer we get towards the start of the season, the fact that spring training has started, I feel like there's added pressure on these players to sign. And it's just kind of by virtue of the clock ticking, like the more time that goes by, the sooner we should expect deals to happen. And I just feel like the Giants are well positioned to make a strike on one or more of these players. And I was just looking through some old notes kind of by accident, and it was from Jeff Passan, and it was like, I don't know, a month ago or more. And something that he wrote was that executives around the game expect the Giants to end up signing one or more of the top four Scott Boras clients that are out there right now. And those are those four I just named. And we've also, like, the stars kind of align in another way, in that there are other teams out there like that are in some forms like direct competition for these players. Like I think of the Blue Jays, Matt Chapman, he's the incumbent third baseman there, and yet their GM today, I think it was either today or yesterday, spoke to reporters, and this is in The Athletic that I read this. He said basically that in order to make any additions of significance, there would have to be subtractions of significance. And so that's kind of GM speak for don't expect significant additions. And we've also heard similar things from the Angels. We've heard, the Padres are clearly operating a little bit differently with, shedding the payroll of Juan Soto and having a goal of their payroll being much lower than it was in the last couple of years. The Dodgers may be done, but never ruled them out. And so all of a sudden you're like, the Texas Rangers, oh, by the way, also said don't expect any more additions because there's uncertainty around their television deal because of these regional sports networks kind of going under, Bally Sports. And so teams that had Bally Sports as their TV provider for fans, are facing financial uncertainty in their television deals, and the Giants are not one of those teams that was in a relationship with Bally Sports. They do NBC Sports, Bay Area, and so anyway, they're also like 30 million under where they were last year in terms of payroll. They're 24 million below the first luxury tax threshold. There's no rule that says you can't go past the first luxury tax threshold. There's no cap in baseball. In fact, there are 4 thresholds, and we're talking about the first one. The fourth one is up towards 300 million. The Giants' luxury tax payroll is right now, with the presumed addition of Jorge Soler, who, by the way, Susan Slusser has reported that his physical is today. And so assuming he passes the physical, which is always the go-to assumption. We just happen to live in a universe where we ran into a disastrous failed physical situation last year. But assuming that goes through, their luxury tax payroll is 213 million-ish, which is 24 million shy of the first threshold. And so I kind of view it like a game of musical chairs. And so there's almost like the Giants are a chair and the players need to find a spot, and there's not like an abundance of chairs, right? Like there's just how many teams are really out there for Snell and Montgomery and Cody Bellinger and Matt Chapman, because you look at some of the big market teams kind of being like, we talk about the Blue Jays and the Angels and whatnot, and the Dodgers perhaps not being in a position where they're going to add more. And then you look at the smaller market teams and they're like never a factor. Like you're not going to see Blake Snell, unless something crazy happens, end up on pretty much, you could write a whole big list of teams like the A's, the Pirates, the Royals, even the Orioles, even though they're good. And so the Giants, I feel like they are uniquely positioned, maybe not uniquely, but they have a seat at the table. And sooner or later, these guys have to sign somewhere. And I think they need the talent, and the talent is there, and this is an opportunity. And the last episode, we focused on a mailbag question. It was our kind of lead topic. Should they just wait out, or basically punt on the rest of this free agent class in order to have more financial flexibility, less money on the books essentially for next year's class? And my personal answer was no, because you cannot guarantee anything going right in terms of free agency in future seasons. We've seen that firsthand. Even if you agree to terms with a guy, they might fail their physical. And also this season matters a lot, I think. And so go out there and get 2 of those guys. That's like where I'm at. And so coming up in just a minute, we are going to briefly discuss which of the guys do I think is the best fit. An arm, a bat, both, and also injury updates as camp opens. And then also the Giants made a trade. It was kind of a minor move, but I think it's actually somewhat or even fairly significant. So we will get into it momentarily. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you in part by Backblaze. Data is the digital world's most precious resource. Backblaze has made it their mission to make it easy to store, use, and protect data. They protect all the data on your machines automatically. Backblaze offers multiple restore options, including rapid recovery in the event of data loss or ransomware. Start with a free trial today and then get unlimited cloud backup for Macs, PCs, and businesses for just $99 a year. Just go to backblaze.com/lockedonmlb. You can access your backed up data from anywhere in the world using Backblaze's web app or their iOS or Android apps. Few data protection services have the recommendations that Backblaze does. They are recommended by the New York Times, Incorporated Magazine, Macworld, PC World, LifeWire, Tom's Guide, 9 to 5 Mac, Wired, and more. Receive a fully featured no-risk free trial at backblaze.com/lockedonmlb. Go there, try it out, start protecting yourself from potential bad times. That's backblaze.com/lockedonmlb. All right, as promised, we are going to continue running through some injury updates, also just finishing up on that point about these free agents. And, I've brought it up a lot, and I kind of am wishy-washy on, arm, bat, like Chapman, Snell, Bellinger, Montgomery. It's like hard to pick when it comes down to it. And so maybe it just comes down to, look, I'm sure the team has its preferences, hopefully, but just the Giants ending up with at least one of those guys just seems very possible to me. And that's exciting, but you never know. And I'm certainly not promising anything. And we'll see. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, on Monday, we'll be back with fresh information. Jorge Soler, did he pass his physical? I'm sure that will be a topic of discussion, and hopefully some activity over the weekend for the Giants as camp rolls on, and then position players report early next week. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. All right, so who among these four do I think is the best fit for the Giants? Well, I say get two of them, like at least. I mean, I'm greedy, but you can't get two of them and not trade away players and then stay under the luxury tax. So I'm kind of like operating like their goal is to stay under that luxury tax. We did have Greg Johnson saying that they would make an exception for the right player, like maybe for a 1-year situation, meaning not a 1-year deal, but that if they went over the luxury tax, they would try to get back under it afterwards, like in the subsequent season. And so I don't know if he just kind of, when he talks about the right player, if he's talking about Ohtani or Judge or Correa or Yamamoto, or if he's talking about, Blake Snell. I don't know. But to me, the guy has been Blake Snell, especially when you look at that starting rotation and how inexperienced it is outside of Logan Webb when we're talking about the opening day kind of projected rotation. We're looking at Logan Webb, Kyle Harrison, Jordan Hicks, who's made like 8 starts in his career, even though he's been around forever because he's been a reliever, Keaton Wynn, and Tristan Beck. I mean, I like all of those guys, but there's so much risk there because they're all inexperienced outside of Webb in a rotation role. What makes things complicated is that you do have Robbie Ray and Alex Cobb coming back from injuries at some point in the season. But for Ray, he's already on the 60-day IL. Cobb is hoping to avoid it. That'll be part of our injury updates later, is that he's doing well, hoping to avoid the 60-day. But I think it's probably inevitable at some point as they continue to hopefully add. But, Ray is saying like, around the end, coming out of the All-Star break is the best case scenario. And for Cobb, we're talking probably a couple months-ish being the best case scenario. And so that's a couple months is a third of the season. After the All-Star break is more than half of the season because the All-Star break happens past the halfway point. And so I don't know. I just keep coming back to Snell. And like he was the Cy Young winner in 2023 in the National League. And Logan Webb finished second. And so you could literally sign this guy today. He's just out there. He's from Seattle, West Coast guy, I don't know if he's from Seattle proper, but the Seattle area. So I don't know. You could go out there today and have the number 1 and number 2 Cy Young finishers in the National League in your starting rotation, and then all of a sudden you mix in Hicks and Harrison and competition between Wynn and Beck and other young players for other roles. And Cobb is a free agent after the season. He's getting older. He's like 36, going on 37. And so like looking forward to have like Snell and Webb locked in. I think Webb starts that 5-year extension this year. And so if you go 5 years for Snell, you would have Logan Webb and Blake Snell locked in side by side for the next 5 seasons. Yes, indeed, Logan Webb, 5 additional years, 5 years starting this year. And then you've got a bunch of young pitching coming, and like Harrison, he's got 6 years of team control, for example, because he just barely debuted at the end of last year. So for me, that's where I land, is like, I think Chapman makes a lot of sense too, because that would really improve the kind of solidify the third base position. I think JD Davis is just kind of fringe as an everyday player, whereas Chapman has that floor of just always being good defensively and has always been above average offensively, even if he's been streaky and kind of inconsistent and up and down a little bit. And there's also the Bay Area ties and the Bob Melvin ties. Blake Snell also Bob Melvin ties the last 2 years in San Diego. So I don't know, just go out and sign these guys. Go over the luxury tax one time, and if you have to get down, you could trade somebody. JD Davis becomes expendable if you acquire Chapman, but I think still there's no way you would get under the luxury tax unless you also then traded like Michael Conforto as well. Anyway, I just think those are the guys that stand out to me the most as fits, but you could make a case for like Bellinger and Montgomery as well. But to me, it's Snell and it's Chapman, and Snell's number 1 and Chapman number 2. Anyway, let's turn our attention to some of these kind of injury updates. So the Giants sent out a update to the media, and I have it for you. Press release, Giants medical updates for Wednesday, February 14th. So this is a couple days ago, but nothing as of yet has happened in addition. Let's hope it stays that way, but injuries are a part of the game, unfortunately. And the first thing that jumps off the page is that Alex Cobb is currently throwing out to 90 feet 3 times a week and is progressing as planned. He'll remain limited in spring, but continues to do well. And so this is like, I then want to follow up and say, reporters talked to Alex Cobb, and he was just discussing how well he's doing and that he feels good. And a goal for him is to face hitters by the end of camp, like in batting practice, essentially live BP. And so he's obviously still a ways away. If like he's not going to crack the opening day roster by some miracle. He's far behind, and he's going to miss time. But the good news is he's feeling good from a significant offseason left hip surgery. So speaking of pitchers, Robbie Ray, this is no surprise, went on the 60-day IL, recovering from left elbow UCL surgery. He's throwing 3 times a week, but he's going to be, like he said himself, best case scenario right after the All-Star break. This is a big one. Reggie Crawford, the Giants' first-round pick 2 years ago. They went back-to-back seasons in which they took a two-way player, I'm doing air quotes if you're not watching on YouTube, with their first-round selection. But Reggie Crawford, they have ditched hitting. They have abandoned the two-way player status for Reggie Crawford, and he's just going to focus on pitching. And man, when I watch this guy pitch, I can see why. I mean, we're talking like power stuff from the left side, from kind of a low, mid, 3/4 arm slot. It's just like kind of electric stuff, and I could see him on the fast track for sure, but he has a left lat strain, which he suffered last week. He's going to rest, rehab, and will resume throwing in 3 to 4 weeks. So that stinks because, would have liked to see him in Major League camp, but probably not going to happen at this point. Slater had right elbow surgery, Austin Slater, in the offseason. No restrictions no restrictions with hitting, and is finishing his throwing program. So it sounds like he's about on time. And Thomas Szapucki had thoracic outlet, or he currently has left shoulder soreness, but he's a right. Oh, wait, no. I'm thinking of Cole Waits. Szapucki is recovering from thoracic outlet surgery last May, dealing with left shoulder soreness. And Kai-Wei Tang, who was added to the 40-man over the offseason, has a left oblique strain, which he suffered in Arizona last week while throwing a bullpen. He's not going to throw for 2 to 3 weeks. So there are your injury updates. We have more updates from spring as well, including new plans for Blake Sable. But also I want to get into this trade that the Giants made that kind of went under the radar, but it very well could have significance for the Giants as they entered the season. So we'll get into it momentarily. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. And right now you can go over to FanDuel.com and check out NBA All-Star Game action. I was just scrolling through right before I started recording. You can bet on the skills competition, skills challenge winner, the game itself. The West is moneyline favorites over the East at -148, the spread being -3. If memory serves, these games are usually pretty close. You can bet on who is the All-Star Game MVP and just about anything over at FanDuel.com/lockedon. And, quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. Shoot your shot. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA. All right, as promised, we are going to talk about this trade a little bit because it has gone unnoticed. I don't want to say unnoticed, but it hasn't received a lot of attention. But I decided to kind of dig in because that's the thing. The Giants make a lot of fringy, around the edges type of moves, and sometimes I neglect to pay attention to them anymore, because if I paid attention too much to all of them, then we would spend a lot of our time talking about things that ultimately never matter. But I think that this one could matter, and that is their their acquisition of infielder/outfielder. No surprise there that they're after a versatile player, Otto Lopez from the Blue Jays, who they acquired in exchange for cash considerations. Never understood why they have to say considerations. Why not just say cash, right? They acquired him for cash. Lopez, significantly, has a minor league option. He's 5'10", 185, according to Fangraphs. And I just decided, you know what? I need to read this guy's scouting report, because we know that they're in the market for a kind of shortstop to compete with Marco Luciano, or just somebody to kind of protect Marco Luciano, in case he struggles. Who do they turn to? And they could very well turn to Otto Lopez for playing time this year. And let me just read you the Fangraphs scouting report on Otto Lopez that is from this past March. So it's not been updated for 2024, but in March 2023, this was the write-up on Lopez, who is now still just 25 years old. So they say, Lopez, Team Canada's shortstop in the World Baseball Classic. He's a dual Dominican-Canadian citizen whose family moved to Montreal when he was 12. Entered 2023 spring training in the mix for one of Toronto's last opening day roster spots. Lopez has played all over the diamond during his pro career, be it stateside or in the Dominican Winter League. His arm strength keeps him from truly profiling at shortstop, but his range and instincts are sufficient to play both second base and center field. The Blue Jays beefed up their center field depth ahead of Lopez in the form of Kevin Kiermaier and Dalton Varsho. So what had recently looked like a viable path to a roster spot for him is currently occupied by those two and Santiago Espinal. He's a long-term fit as a very versatile utility man with a plus hit tool and basically no power. In 91 games at AAA in 2022, he slashed .297, .378, .415 with a 10.5% walk rate and just a 15.5% strikeout rate before he got a big league cup of coffee at the end of the year. Lopez tends to poke soft contact the other way, wearing out shallow right field. He's especially difficult to beat with fastballs and puts enough balls in play to be a semi-regular big leaguer at several positions. So apologies again for the long read there, but that sounds like the kind of profile of a player who's worth talking about. And he was their 10th ranked prospect at the time of that write-up. So the Giants acquired this guy. Last year in AAA, he struggled. He only played in 84 games, so there must have been some kind of injury. But in AAA the previous year, he did quite well. And looks like he didn't play much. I don't know what the deal was with his playing time. He's obviously dealt with some injuries. But, yeah, and he's also fast. I mean, this is a guy who's got, he stole 13 bases in 84 games in AAA in 2023. He stole 14 bases in 91 games in 2022 in AAA. And so if the one thing holding him back from playing shortstop is like arm strength, then to me that's a guy who can fill in probably, because the way I read that was more like he's not an everyday shortstop, but when they say he can play all over the diamond and has a plus hit tool, I mean, that's interesting. That's interesting. And he has a minor league option. I'm not sure if I said that already. So he is a guy, along with Luciano, who can be optioned and just kind of enters that mix. So it doesn't have to be shortstop. You do have Tyler Fitzgerald on the 40-man as well, who kind of has a similar-ish profile, actually. But I like this acquisition, getting him for just cash. And I like the fact that he doesn't strike out. Contact guy, speed guy, versatile player. Kind of maybe reminds me a little bit from reading that about of Mauricio Dubon, except Dubon has a pretty darn good arm, so minus that part, I guess. But just the versatility, although Dubon, when they got him, he wasn't really all that versatile, and they kind of made him versatile. So anyway, Otto Lopez, a name to kind of pay attention to. I still think that they need more proven depth at these positions, like shortstop, second base, and center field as well, because you're looking at, in center, you could put Yastrzemski and Slater there in the event of, a Jung Hoo Lee injury or something like that, and then have corner outfield guys be the guys who fill in. But at the same time, Otto Lopez, just add him to the mix. But I do think, I've talked about Willie Adames, Ha-Sung Kim. Those guys make a lot of sense. And it would probably be in lieu of like a Matt Chapman, and then you would slide Luciano over to a third base competition with like J.D. Davis and Casey Schmidt. And I really like the idea of that as well. So I think there are multiple paths for the Giants to proceed forward here, to improve their team, but it involves significant additions, and maybe two, get Blake Snell and then get a hitter, whether it's Chapman or Adames or Ha-Sung Kim, somebody like that, left side of the infield, good defense. That's kind of the way I see it. But Snell, pairing him with Webb is just too tempting for me to pass up. And at this point, maybe there's a bargain out there to be had even. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much. So thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again on Monday. Have a great weekend. Fingers crossed on Jorge Soler's physical. I'm sure it'll be fine, but I'm not 100% sure because you never can be. Anyway, have a great weekend. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.